The frozen wind howled through the mountain pass like 1,000 dying wolves, and Willa Ramsey knew with absolute certainty that Thomas Garrett had left her to die in the snow, taking her horse, her supplies, and every promise he had ever whispered in her ear during the long months they had traveled together from St. Louis. She lay curled against a rocky outcrop, her traveling dress already stiff with ice, her fingers numb inside her thin gloves, watching the last traces of hoofprints disappear beneath the relentless snowfall that had turned the world into an endless white nightmare. The year was 1878, and she had been foolish enough to trust a man who spoke sweetly while his eyes calculated the value of everything she owned, foolish enough to believe his talk of marriage and a new life in California, foolish enough to think herself immune to the kind of betrayal that happened to other women in dime novels and cautionary tales. The blizzard had come suddenly, sweeping down from the mountains while they rode through southern Utah territory, heading toward what Thomas had promised would be a shortcut that would save them 3 days on the trail. She remembered the moment when his expression had changed, when calculation had replaced concern, when he had looked at her struggling to control her frightened mare and made a decision that would determine whether she lived or died. He had dismounted, ostensibly to help her, and then in one swift motion he had grabbed her horse's reins, swung himself into his own saddle with her mare in tow, and spurred both animals into the swirling white chaos before she could even cry out in protest. The shock had frozen her more thoroughly than the cold, the sheer impossibility of such cruelty leaving her standing motionless in the snow until her legs had finally given way and she had crawled to this meager shelter. Now, as darkness began to creep across the storm-racked landscape, Willa forced herself to think clearly despite the cold that seemed to be turning her thoughts sluggish and strange. She had perhaps an hour before full nightfall, maybe two before the cold claimed her entirely. Her reticule still hung from her wrist, useless and mocking with its contents of a few dollars, a handkerchief, and the silver locket her mother had given her before the fever took her 5 years ago. No matches, no knife, nothing that could start a fire or provide real warmth. Her wool traveling cloak was well made, but meant for autumn weather, not this unseasonable mountain storm that had caught them both by surprise. She wondered if Thomas had planned this all along, if he had deliberately led her into danger, or if the opportunity had simply presented itself and he had seized it without hesitation or remorse. The wind shifted, carrying with it a sound that seemed impossible, the steady rhythm of hoofbeats cutting through the storm's endless roar. Willa lifted her head, squinting against the driving snow, certain she was hallucinating, that her freezing mind was conjuring rescue from desperate hope. But the sound grew louder, more distinct, and then through the white curtain emerged a horse and rider, solid and real, moving with careful determination through the deepening drifts. The horse was a sturdy bay gelding, the kind of animal built for mountain work, and the man on its back sat tall in the saddle despite the wind that tried to tear him sideways. "Hello, the rocks," the man called out, his voice carrying authority and concern in equal measure. "I saw tracks before the snow covered them. Anyone here need help?" Willa tried to answer, but her voice came out as barely a whisper, her throat too cold and tight to produce proper sound. She managed to lift one hand, waving weakly, and that small movement caught the rider's attention immediately. He turned his horse toward her outcrop and dismounted in one fluid motion, leading the bay into the shelter of the rocks before crouching down beside her. "Madam, can you hear me? Can you speak?" His face was weathered and strong, with eyes the color of storm clouds and a jaw dark with several days of stubble. He wore a heavy sheepskin coat and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low against the wind, and his gloved hands were gentle as they touched her shoulder. "Cold," Willa managed to say, her teeth chattering so violently she could barely form the word. "He left me." Something dangerous flashed across the cowboy's face, but his voice remained steady and calm. "I am going to get you on my horse and take you somewhere warm. Can you stand if I help you?" Willa tried to nod, but was not certain if her head actually moved. The cowboy did not wait for a clearer answer. He stripped off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her shoulders, and the residual warmth from his body felt like a miracle against her frozen skin. Then he lifted her as easily as if she weighed nothing at all, cradling her against his chest as he stood. She could feel the solid strength of him, the certainty in his movements, and something inside her that had gone rigid with fear finally loosened enough to let exhaustion flood through her. "There is a town called Beaver, about 3 miles south of here," he said, settling her onto his horse's saddle before swinging up behind her. "I have a ranch just outside it. We can make it there before full dark if we push hard. Hold on to the saddle horn and lean back against me. I will not let you fall." Willa did as he instructed, her frozen fingers barely able to grip the horn, her body swaying with weakness and cold. The cowboy wrapped one arm securely around her waist, holding her steady against him while he guided the bay with his other hand. The horse moved carefully but quickly, picking its way through the snow with the confidence of an animal that knew this country well. Behind them, her pathetic shelter in the rocks disappeared into the white storm, and Willa felt a strange sense of unreality, as though she had died there after all, and this rescue was merely a dream her freezing brain had conjured in its final moments. "My name is Cole Kincaid," the cowboy said, his voice close to her ear, steady and grounding. "I run cattle on the East Range. I was checking on my winter pasture when the storm came up. Finding you was providence, I reckon." "Willa," she whispered. "Willa Ramsey." "Well, Miss Ramsey, you are safe now. I promise you that." The certainty in his words made something in her chest tighten with emotion she did not have the strength to examine. She let herself lean more heavily against him, feeling the warmth of his body seeping through her layers of frozen clothing, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing and the strong beat of his heart against her back. The ride seemed to take both forever and no time at all. Willa drifted in and out of awareness, her mind playing tricks with memory and present moment. She saw Thomas's face, charming and false, saw the moment he had taken her horse and ridden away without looking back. She felt Cole's arm tighten around her when she swayed too far to one side, heard his voice murmuring reassurances that she could not quite make out over the wind. The world narrowed to cold and movement and the steady presence of the man behind her, until suddenly there were lights in the distance, golden and warm against the darkening storm. "Almost there," Cole said. "Stay with me, just a little longer." The lights resolved into buildings, a small cluster of structures that formed the outskirts of a town. Cole guided his horse past a general store and a boarding house, past a church with a white steeple barely visible through the snow, and then turned onto a smaller road that led east. After perhaps half a mile, a ranch house emerged from the darkness, a sturdy two-story building with smoke rising from its chimney and lamplight glowing in the windows. Cole brought the bay right up to the porch steps and dismounted, reaching up to lift Willa down with the same careful strength he had shown before. Her legs would not hold her weight, and he simply adjusted his grip and carried her up the steps, kicking the door open with his boot. "Martha," he called out, "I need help." An older woman appeared from what looked like a kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her face was lined with years and weather, but her eyes were sharp and kind as they took in the situation immediately. "Merciful heavens, Cole, get that poor girl by the fire. I will fetch blankets and hot water." Cole carried Willa to a large fireplace where flames crackled and danced, settling her gently into a padded chair that had been drawn close to the hearth. Martha reappeared with an armload of wool blankets and began wrapping them around Willa with efficient tenderness while Cole knelt to remove her frozen boots. "Her feet are bad," he said quietly. "Toes might be frostbitten." "We will warm them slowly," Martha replied. "Too fast, and we will do more harm than good." "Cole, put that kettle on the hook to heat. We need broth and tea, something warm for her insides." She turned her attention to Willa, her hands gentle as she tucked the blankets more securely. "Can you tell me your name, dear?" "Willa," she managed, her voice still barely functional. "Willa Ramsey." "Well, Miss Ramsey, you are in Cole Kincaid's home, and I am Martha Hayes, his housekeeper, and the closest thing he has to family hereabouts. You are safe now, do you understand? Safe and warm, and we are going to take good care of you." The simple kindness in Martha's voice broke something loose inside Willa, and she felt hot tears spill down her frozen cheeks. Martha made a soft sound of sympathy and gathered her close, blankets and all, letting her cry against her shoulder while Cole moved quietly around them, feeding the fire and preparing the things Martha had requested. As the warmth from the fire began to penetrate Willa's frozen clothing, the pain started. Her fingers and toes burned with returning circulation, sharp needles of agony that made her gasp and bite her lip to keep from crying out. Martha kept up a steady stream of soothing words, rubbing Willa's hands carefully between her own, while Cole returned with a cup of steaming broth that smelled of beef and herbs. "Small sips," Martha instructed, holding the cup to Willa's lips. "Let your stomach remember what warmth feels like." The broth was rich and hot, and Willa had never tasted anything more wonderful. She sipped obediently, feeling the liquid heat spread through her chest and belly, pushing back the deadly chill that had settled into her bones. Cole crouched beside the chair, his expression concerned as he watched her drink. "Can you tell us what happened?" he asked gently. "You said someone left you." Willa looked at him, at this stranger who had saved her life, and felt shame wash through her, along with the returning warmth. "I was a fool," she said, her voice stronger now, though still rough. "I trusted a man named Thomas Garrett. He said he would take me to California, said we would be married when we got there. We had been traveling for 6 weeks, always moving west, and I believed everything he told me." She paused, taking another sip of broth, gathering the courage to speak the rest of it. "When the storm came, he took my horse and rode away. He left me in the snow to die." Cole's jaw tightened with barely controlled anger, but his voice remained gentle. "You are not a fool for trusting someone, Miss Ramsey. The fault lies entirely with the man who betrayed that trust." "Did he hurt you in any other way?" Willa understood what he was asking and shook her head. "He was always respectful, always proper. I think that was part of the game he played. He knew I would not have traveled with him otherwise." "Do you know where he was headed?" Cole asked. "Which direction he went when he left you?" "West, I think. He always talked about California, about opportunities there. But I do not know if any of it was true. Maybe he was heading somewhere else entirely, using a different name, playing the same trick on another foolish woman." Martha made a sound of disgust. "Men like that deserve to hang, and you are not foolish, child. You are brave for setting out on such a journey in the first place." "I had nowhere else to go," Willa said quietly. "My parents died. My father first, and then my mother a year later. There were debts, and the house had to be sold. I was working as a seamstress in St. Louis, barely making enough to pay for my room, when I met Thomas. He seemed like an answer to prayer." She laughed bitterly. "I should have known better. My mother always said if something seemed too good to be true, it usually was." Cole stood, his expression thoughtful. "How long ago did he leave you? Before I found you?" Willa tried to think through the confusion of pain and cold. "Maybe 2 hours? It was hard to tell time in the storm." "Then he has perhaps a 5-hour lead, maybe less if the storm slowed him down. 2 horses in heavy snow make slow going." Cole looked at Martha. "Can you stay with Miss Ramsey tonight? Make sure she is warm and comfortable." Martha's eyes narrowed. "Cole Kincaid, you are not thinking of going back out in that storm. A man who would leave a woman to freeze to death cannot be allowed to simply ride away," Cole said flatly. "And he has Miss Ramsey's horse, which is theft on top of attempted murder." "The storm will kill you just as dead as it would have killed her," Martha protested. "Wait until morning at least." Willa found her voice. Urgent, despite her weakness. "Please, do not risk yourself for my sake. The horse is not worth your life, and Thomas is not worth pursuing. Let him go. Let him face whatever justice God sees fit to deliver." Cole looked at her for a long moment, and Willa saw the conflict in his storm gray eyes. Finally, he nodded slowly. You are right. My first duty is to make sure you are safe and recover fully. The horse is just a horse, and men like Thomas Garrett tend to bring about their own downfall eventually. He moved toward the door. I need to tend to my bay, get him settled and fed. Martha, keep Miss Ramsey warm and make sure she drinks plenty of fluids. I will be back shortly. After he left, Martha helped Willa out of her wet outer clothing, replacing her frozen dress with a flannel nightgown that must have belonged to Martha herself, given how it hung loose on Willa's slender frame. The older woman rubbed Willa's feet gently, checking for signs of serious frostbite, and pronounced them bruised but likely to heal without permanent damage. You were very lucky, Martha said. Another hour and you would have lost toes at the least, your life at the worst. Cole has always had good instincts about when to check the range. Even in bad weather, the good Lord must have been guiding him today. I do not feel very lucky, Willa admitted. I feel like the greatest fool who ever lived. Martha fixed her with a stern look. That kind of thinking does you no good. You made a decision based on the information you had, and a bad man took advantage of your trust. That speaks to his character, not yours. Now you need to focus on getting well and figuring out what comes next. Willa had not let herself think about what came next, had not let herself see beyond the immediate crisis of survival. Now warm and safe, the reality of her situation settled over her like a weight. I have no money, she said slowly. Thomas had been carrying our funds, said it was safer that way. I have maybe $3 in my reticule and the clothes I was wearing. I have no horse, no supplies, no prospects. I do not even know where I would go if I could leave. Then you will stay here until you figure it out, Martha said firmly. Cole would not turn away someone in need, and neither would I. This ranch has room enough and work enough for willing hands. You can earn your keep and save some money while you decide on your next step. I cannot impose like that, Willa protested weakly. It is not an imposition if you are working for your room and board, Martha replied. I could use help with the cooking and mending, and Cole could use another pair of hands come spring when the calving starts. You are welcome here as long as you need to be, and that is the end of it. Before Willa could respond, Cole returned, stamping snow from his boots in the entryway. He had changed into dry clothes, and his dark hair was damp where snow had melted into it. He looked younger somehow, less like the weathered cowboy who had rescued her, and more like a man perhaps in his middle 20s, handsome in a rugged, honest way that made her heart do something strange and unexpected. The storm is getting worse, he said, moving to the fire to warm his hands. We are going to be snowed in for at least a day, maybe two. The bay is settled in the barn with extra feed and water. He glanced at Willa. How are you feeling, Miss Ramsey? Better, she said honestly. Warmer. Your housekeeper says I was lucky you found me when you did. I say it was meant to be, Cole replied. I almost did not go out today. Something told me I needed to check the winter pasture before the weather turned, even though I had just been out there 2 days ago. I do not generally question those kinds of instincts. They fed her more broth, and then a plate of stew with fresh bread that Martha produced from the kitchen as though feeding unexpected guests in the middle of a blizzard was a regular occurrence. Willa ate slowly, feeling strength return to her body with each bite, though exhaustion pulled at her like an undertow. Martha noticed her drooping eyelids and shooed Cole from the room, helping Willa up a narrow staircase to a small bedroom under the eaves. The room was simple but clean, with an iron frame bed covered in quilts, a washstand with a china basin and pitcher, and a single window that looked out on the storm-dark night. Martha turned down the bed and helped Willa climb in, tucking the quilts around her with maternal care. You sleep as long as you need, Martha said. Tomorrow will be soon enough to think about everything else. For tonight, just rest and be grateful you are alive. Willa wanted to say something about gratitude, about how much she owed to Cole and Martha, but sleep rose up and claimed her before she could form the words. Her last conscious thought was of storm gray eyes and strong hands lifting her onto a horse, of a voice promising she was safe now. She woke to bright sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee and bacon drifting up from below. For a moment, Willa could not remember where she was, and then everything came rushing back. Thomas's betrayal, the freezing cold, Cole's rescue. She sat up slowly, testing her body, and found herself stiff and sore, but otherwise intact. Her fingers and toes ached dully, but moved when she commanded them, and her head felt clear for the first time since the storm. Someone had brought her clothes up during the night, her dress and undergarments cleaned and dried, and folded neatly on the chair by the window. Willa dressed carefully, wincing at the soreness in her muscles, and then made her way downstairs, following the sounds of conversation and the promise of coffee. Cole and Martha were seated at a large wooden table in the kitchen, plates of eggs and bacon before them, speaking quietly about ranch business. They both looked up when Willa appeared in the doorway, and Cole immediately stood, pulling out a chair for her. "Miss Ramsey, how are you feeling this morning?" "Sore," Willa admitted, "but so much better than I have any right to expect. Thank you both again. I do not have adequate words for what you did for me." "Sit down and eat," Martha said, already filling a plate for her. "Gratitude is all well and good, but you need food and coffee to rebuild your strength." The meal was delicious, simple ranch cooking done well, and Willa ate with an appetite she had not expected. Between bites, she looked out the kitchen window at a transformed world. The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind drifts of fresh snow that sparkled in the morning sun. The landscape was beautiful and deadly, pristine white, broken only by the dark shapes of buildings and the fence lines of corrals. "The road to town will be impassable for a few days," Cole said, following her gaze. "We are well supplied, so that is no hardship, but it means you are stuck here with us for a bit. Martha mentioned last night that I might be able to work in exchange for my keep," Willa said carefully. "I am a good seamstress and I can cook and clean. I do not want to be a burden." Cole and Martha exchanged a look that Willa could not quite interpret. Then Cole said, "You are not a burden, Miss Ramsey, but if you want to work, there is certainly enough to do around here. Martha could use help with the household chores, and I need to hire someone for the spring season anyway. We can consider it a trial arrangement until you decide what you want to do next." "I think I would like that," Willa said quietly. "I think I would like to be useful and earn my way while I figure out my future." The next few days fell into a comfortable routine. The snow kept them all close to the ranch house, and Willa threw herself into helping Martha with cooking, mending, and the endless small tasks that kept a household running. She learned that Cole ran a modest but successful cattle operation, that he had come to Utah 5 years ago after the death of his parents back in Kansas, looking for a fresh start and open land. Martha had been his father's cousin, a widow with no children who had come west with Cole to keep house for him, and found herself making a home in the harsh but beautiful country. Cole was quiet but not cold, with a dry sense of humor that emerged during evening meals, and a clear dedication to his work that Willa found admirable. He treated her with unfailing courtesy but kept a respectful distance, never pressing her for more details about Thomas or her past, never making her feel like an obligation or a burden. Martha was warmer, more maternal, and Willa found herself confiding things to the older woman that she had not spoken aloud in years. Her loneliness after her mother's death, her desperation to escape the grinding poverty of her seamstress work, her foolish hope that Thomas had represented something real and lasting. "You have a good heart," Martha told her one afternoon as they sat together mending clothes by the fire. "Do not let one bad man convince you otherwise. Not all men are like Thomas Garrett. Some men, like Cole, are worth trusting." Willa glanced toward the window, where she could see Cole working in the barn, despite the cold, tending to his horses and cattle with patient dedication. "He seems like a good man," she said carefully. But I am not sure I trust my own judgment anymore. Trust takes time, Martha replied, especially after it has been broken so badly. But do not close yourself off completely. Cole is a good man, one of the best I have known. He would never hurt someone weaker than himself, never take advantage. He lives by a code, even if he would never be so fancy as to call it that. Over the following week, as the snow slowly melted enough for travel to resume, Willa found herself watching Cole more than she probably should. She noticed the way he was always careful with his animals, speaking gently to them even when they were difficult. She noticed how he always made sure Martha and Willa ate before he took his own plate, how he never raised his voice or showed impatience when things went wrong. She noticed the strength in his hands when he carried firewood, the intelligence in his eyes when he planned the spring work, the rare but genuine warmth of his smile when Martha told a story that amused him. She also noticed the way he sometimes looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention, a soft expression that made her heart do that strange flutter it had done the first night. She did not know what to do with that observation, did not know if she was ready to trust those feelings or if she ever would be. One morning, nearly 2 weeks after her rescue, Cole announced at breakfast that he needed to ride into Beaver to pick up supplies and check on mail. The roads should be clear enough now, he said. I will be gone most of the day. Miss Ramsey, if you would like to come along, you could meet some of the townspeople. Beaver is small, but the folks are generally good-hearted. Willa hesitated, then nodded. I think I would like that. I should probably let people know I am here in case anyone has word of Thomas or my horse. The ride into town was cold but clear, the winter sun bright on the melting snow. Cole kept his horse at an easy pace, and Willa rode beside him on a gentle mare named Daisy that Martha had assured her was completely trustworthy. They talked as they rode, easy conversation about the land and the weather and the small dramas of ranch life, and Willa realized with some surprise that she felt comfortable with Cole in a way she had never quite felt with Thomas. There was no performance in Cole's manner, no sense that he was trying to charm or impress her. He was simply himself, steady and real, and that honesty was more attractive than any amount of smooth words. Beaver proved to be a small but thriving community, with a main street lined with businesses and homes spreading out in neat rows on either side. Cole took her first to the general store, introducing her to the owner, a round man named Mr. Peterson, who greeted Cole warmly and Willa with curious but kind interest. This is Miss Willa Ramsey, Cole said. She will be staying at my ranch for a while, helping Martha with the household. She had some trouble on the trail a few weeks back, lost her horse and supplies. If anyone comes through asking about a lone woman or trying to sell a horse that does not belong to them, I would appreciate word. Mr. Peterson's eyebrows rose, but he nodded seriously. I will keep an eye out, Cole. Miss Ramsey, welcome to Beaver. If there is anything you need, you just let me know. They made similar stops at the boarding house, the church, and the land office, Cole introducing her each time with the same brief explanation. Willa was struck by the respect people showed Cole, the way they trusted his word without question and extended that trust to her by association. No one pried or made her feel like an object of gossip, though she could see curiosity in their eyes. Their last stop was the town's small sheriff's office, where a lean man with a silver star pinned to his vest listened intently as Cole and Willa described Thomas Garrett and what he had done. The sheriff, who introduced himself as Tom Webster, took notes and promised to send word to neighboring towns and territorial marshals. Men like that often work the same territory repeatedly, Sheriff Webster said. If he has done this before, someone will know his face. And if we can find your horse, Miss Ramsey, we will make sure it is returned to you. Thank you, Sheriff, Willa said, though she held little hope of seeing her horse or Thomas again. On the ride back to the ranch, Cole was quieter than usual, his expression thoughtful. Finally, he said, I hope bringing you to town was not too difficult. I know it cannot be easy to have people know what happened. It is better than hiding, Willa replied. And everyone was kind. You have good neighbors, Mr. Kincaid. Cole, he said, I think after 2 weeks of sharing meals and living under the same roof, you can call me Cole. Then you should call me Willa, she replied, and felt something shift between them, a small but significant step toward real friendship. As winter slowly gave way to early spring, Willa settled more fully into life at the ranch. She proved herself capable and hardworking, taking on more and more responsibilities until Martha joked that she might soon be out of a job. Cole began teaching Willa more about ranch work, showing her how to tend the chickens, how to recognize when cattle were sick or injured, how to read the weather signs that foretold coming storms. She was a quick study, and Cole found himself looking for excuses to work near her, to share his knowledge, and watch her face light up with interest and understanding. They began taking rides together in the evenings when the work was done, Cole showing Willa the boundaries of his property and the wild beauty of the Utah landscape. He told her about his plans for the ranch, his hope to expand his herd and maybe start breeding horses as well as cattle. She told him about her childhood in St. Louis, about her father's bookshop and her mother's garden, about the life that had been taken from her by death and debt. They never spoke directly about the growing attraction between them, but it was there in every shared glance, every accidental touch, every moment of comfortable silence. Martha watched them with satisfaction and kept her opinions to herself, though her knowing smiles spoke volumes. One afternoon in early March, Sheriff Webster rode out to the ranch with news. Cole and Willa were working together in the garden, turning soil in preparation for spring planting when they saw the lawmen approaching. They both stood, brushing dirt from their hands, apprehension and curiosity mingling. Cole, Miss Ramsey, the sheriff greeted them, dismounting. I have news you will want to hear. About Thomas Garrett? Willa asked, her heart suddenly pounding. In a manner of speaking. A man matching his description was arrested 2 weeks ago in a town called Fillmore, about 50 miles northwest of here. He was caught trying to sell a horse that belonged to a local rancher, a horse he claimed to have bought fair and square, but could not produce papers for. When the sheriff there started asking questions, he found 2 more horses in the man's possession that he could not account for. One matched the description of your mare, Miss Ramsey. He was caught, Willa breathed. Actually caught. More than caught. Under questioning, he admitted to running a scheme where he would befriend single women, offer to escort them west, and then rob them when the opportunity presented itself. You were not the first, Miss Ramsey, but the marshal is confident you will be the last. The man is looking at significant prison time for theft and attempted murder. Cole's hand found Willa's, squeezing gently. And the horse? Being held as evidence for now, but once the trial is over, she will be returned to Miss Ramsey. Sheriff over in Fillmore says she is being well cared for in the meantime. Willa felt tears prick her eyes, a complicated mixture of vindication, relief, and residual anger. Thank you for letting us know, Sheriff. It helps to know he cannot hurt anyone else. After the sheriff left, Willa and Cole stood together in the garden, still holding hands, neither quite willing to break the connection. Finally, Cole said quietly, You could leave now if you wanted. Once you have your horse back, you would have the means to continue to California or wherever you wanted to go. Willa looked up at him, at the face that had become so dear to her over the past 2 months, at the eyes that watched her with such careful hope. What if I do not want to leave? She asked softly. What if I have found something here worth staying for? Cole's expression transformed, hope becoming certainty, careful distance becoming warmth. Then I would tell you that I have been half in love with you since the moment I found you in that snowstorm, and fully in love with you since the day you laughed at one of Martha's terrible jokes and looked at me like we were sharing a secret. I would tell you that I want you to stay, not as a hired hand or a guest, but as something much more permanent. I would tell you that I know it is too soon, that you have every reason not to trust easily, but that I will wait as long as you need me to wait. Willa felt her heart swell with emotion so strong it almost hurt. I do not need you to wait, she whispered. I think I have been falling in love with you too, almost from the beginning. You showed me what a good man looks like, Cole. You showed me that trust does not have to be foolish, that kindness can be real. I want to stay. I want to build a life here with you, if you will have me. Cole pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her with a tenderness that made her feel cherished and safe. I will have you, Willa Ramsey, for as long as you will let me. He kissed her then, a gentle press of lips that deepened into something sweeter and more passionate, a kiss that spoke of promises and hope and a future neither of them had dared to imagine just a few months before. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless and smiling, Martha was standing on the porch, watching them with undisguised satisfaction. "About time you two figured it out," she called. "Now get back to work. That garden will not plant itself, and we have a wedding to plan." Cole and Willa laughed, the sound bright and free in the clear spring air, and returned to their work side by side, their shoulders brushing, their hearts already joined. The wedding took place in early April, in the small white church in Beaver, with half the town in attendance. Willa wore a dress she had sewn herself from fabric. Cole had bought her as a courting gift, pale blue cotton with white lace at the collar and cuffs. Cole wore his best suit, his hair neatly trimmed, looking nervous and happy in equal measure. Martha cried openly during the ceremony, and even Sheriff Webster was seen wiping his eyes when the minister pronounced them man and wife. They held the reception at the ranch, tables set up in the yard under the spring sunshine, neighbors bringing covered dishes and well wishes. Willa found herself surrounded by women eager to welcome her into their community, offering advice on everything from cooking to gardening to managing a stubborn husband. Cole stood with the men, accepting congratulations and good-natured ribbing about married life, but his eyes constantly sought Willa across the gathering, making sure she was happy, making sure she knew she was loved. That night, alone in the room they would now share, Cole held Willa close and whispered promises against her hair. "I will never leave you," he said. "I will never betray your trust or make you doubt your place in my life. You are my wife, my partner, my dearest friend. Everything I have is yours, and everything I am is dedicated to making you happy." Willa kissed him with all the love and gratitude and joy that filled her heart. "You already make me happy," she replied. "You saved my life, Cole, in more ways than one. You showed me that the world still has good in it, that not all men are like Thomas Garrett. You gave me a home and a future, and I intend to spend the rest of my life earning that gift." "You do not need to earn anything," Cole said firmly. "You are not here because you owe me. You are here because I love you and you love me, and that is all the reason either of us will ever need." Their wedding night was tender and sweet, a joining of bodies and hearts that felt both momentous and completely natural. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Willa felt a peace settle over her that she had not known since before her parents died. She was home, truly home, not just in a place, but with a person who valued and cherished her. The months that followed brought the normal rhythms of ranch life, the hard work and small joys that defined their days. Willa proved herself invaluable during calving season, staying up through long nights to help with difficult births, her gentle hands and quick mind saving more than one calf that might otherwise have been lost. Cole taught her to ride better, to rope, to shoot, all the skills she would need to be a true partner in the ranch's operation. She taught him patience when dealing with stubborn cattle, showed him how to mend his clothes so they lasted longer, filled the house with cooking smells and laughter and love. Martha moved into a smaller cabin on the property that spring, giving the newlyweds privacy while staying close enough to help with the work and share meals several times a week. She became the grandmother Willa had never known, offering wisdom and comfort and occasionally stern advice when either Cole or Willa needed it. In late summer, Willa's horse was finally returned, brought to the ranch by a deputy marshal who reported that Thomas Garrett had been sentenced to 15 years in territorial prison. Willa looked at the mare, older now and bearing the marks of her ordeal, and felt a complicated mix of emotions. The horse represented her old life, her foolish trust, and near fatal mistake, but also her survival and the beginning of everything good that had come after. "What do you want to do with her?" Cole asked gently, understanding the weight of the moment. Willa ran her hand along the mare's neck, feeling the warm solidity of her, the patient life under her palm. "I want to keep her," she decided. She survived too in her own way. She deserves a good home and a peaceful life, just like I found. They kept the mare, using her for light work and breeding her to Cole's best stallion. The foal that arrived the following spring was strong and beautiful, and Willa cried happy tears when she saw it take its first wobbly steps. By their first anniversary, Willa was pregnant, a development that thrilled them both and sent Martha into a flurry of knitting and planning. Cole became even more protective, hovering until Willa had to firmly remind him that she was with child, not made of glass. But his tenderness never wavered, and Willa found herself falling more in love with him every day, marveling at how this strong, capable man could be so gentle with her. Their son was born in January, during a cold snap that had Cole pacing the floor downstairs while Martha attended Willa's labor. When Martha finally called him up to meet his child, Cole climbed the stairs with shaking legs and a pounding heart, terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. Willa looked exhausted but radiant, cradling a red-faced, squalling infant against her chest. "We have a son," she said, her voice tired but full of wonder. "A healthy, strong son." Cole sat carefully on the edge of the bed, reaching out to touch the baby's tiny hand with one finger. The infant's fingers curled reflexively around his, and Cole felt his throat tighten with emotion. "He is perfect," he whispered. "You are perfect. What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months, debating and dismissing dozens of options. Now, looking at their son, Willa said, "Matthew. It means gift of God, and that is what he is. What you both are." "Matthew Kincaid," Cole said, testing the name. "I like it. Matthew Cole Kincaid." As their son grew, the ranch prospered. Cole's careful management and Willa's business sense proved a powerful combination, and they were able to expand their herd and purchase additional land. They hired help for the busy seasons, young cowboys who respected Cole and were charmed by Willa's cooking and quick wit. The ranch became known throughout the territory as a fair place to work, where hands were paid honestly and treated with dignity. Martha remained a constant presence in their lives, doting on Matthew and eventually on his younger siblings. Willa gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah when Matthew was 3, and then another son they named James when Sarah was 2. The house that had seemed so quiet when Willa first arrived was now full of noise and laughter, of children's voices and running feet, of love overflowing. On winter evenings, when the children were asleep and the day's work was done, Cole and Willa would sit together by the fire, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, and talk about their blessings. Cole never let her forget that she had saved him just as much as he had saved her, that before she arrived, his life had been all work and duty with little joy or warmth. Willa would kiss him and tell him that he had given her a reason to trust again, to love again, to believe in a future that held something more than fear and loneliness. Years passed, marked by the cycles of ranch life and the growth of their family. Matthew grew tall and strong with his father's steady nature and his mother's quick mind. Sarah was bright and stubborn, determined to do everything her brothers could do and usually succeeding. James was the baby, sweet-tempered and gentle, with a gift for working with animals that emerged early. Thomas Garrett became a distant memory, a cautionary tale Willa eventually shared with her daughter when Sarah was old enough to understand. She told her about trust and betrayal, about the importance of listening to instincts and not ignoring warning signs for the sake of hope. But she also told her about rescue and redemption, about how one person's cruelty had led her to another person's kindness, and how the worst moment of her life had ultimately become the beginning of the best. Cole and Willa grew old together on their ranch, watching their children grow and marry and have families of their own. Matthew took over the main cattle operation. Sarah married a neighboring rancher and helped manage the combined properties, and James started a successful horse breeding program that became known throughout the territory. Martha lived to see her great-grandchildren, as she called them, though they shared no blood. She passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 82, surrounded by the family she had helped create. They buried her in the small cemetery behind the Beaver Church under a headstone that read, "Beloved Friend and Family." On the evening after Martha's funeral, Cole and Willa walked together through the land they had built their life on, hand in hand as they had been for more than 3 decades. They were both gray now, their faces lined with age and weather, but their love had only deepened with time. "Do you ever think about that day I found you?" Cole asked, his voice roughened by years but still strong. "About how close we came to never having any of this." "Sometimes," Willa admitted, "but not with fear anymore. I think about it with gratitude. Thomas Garrett tried to destroy me, but instead he led me to you. The worst thing that ever happened to me became the best thing, because it brought me home." Cole pulled her close, kissing her forehead with the same tenderness he had shown on their wedding night. "You brought yourself home," he said. "You survived. You chose to trust again. You built this life with me. I just had the good fortune to be in the right place at the right time." "We were both in the right place at the right time," Willa corrected. "Providence, like you said that first night. We were meant to find each other." They stood together in the fading light, two people who had found each other in a snowstorm and built a lifetime of love and family and purpose. The ranch sprawled around them, prosperous and peaceful, home to their children and grandchildren, a legacy of the choice they had made to trust and love, despite the wounds of the past. As winter descended on Utah once more, bringing the first snows of the season, Cole made sure the firewood was stacked high and the pantry was full. He still worried about Willa in the cold, even though she laughed and told him she had survived far worse. Their grandchildren visited often, filling the house with noise and energy, keeping them young even as their bodies reminded them of their age. On Christmas Eve, the whole family gathered at the ranch house for dinner, 3 generations filling the rooms to bursting. Willa cooked for days in preparation, assisted by her daughters and daughters-in-law, creating the kind of feast that would have amazed the desperate young woman freezing in a snowdrift all those years ago. Cole carved the turkey with ceremony, making jokes that had the children giggling and the adults groaning, presiding over his family with obvious pride and joy. After dinner, when the dishes were cleared and the children were playing with their new toys, Matthew stood and called for everyone's attention. "I want to make a toast," he said, raising his glass, "to my parents, who taught me everything worth knowing about hard work, integrity, and love. To my mother, who could have let bitterness destroy her but chose hope instead. To my father, who proved that being a good man means more than being a strong one. Thank you for building this family, for creating this home, for showing us what real love looks like." Everyone raised their glasses, echoing the sentiment, and Willa found tears streaming down her face as Cole pulled her close. This was her life, this abundance of love and family, this legacy of survival and trust and second chances. She thought of the girl she had been, desperate and afraid, and wished she could tell her that everything would be more than all right, that pain would give way to joy beyond imagining. That night, after everyone had gone home or retired to guest rooms, Cole and Willa sat alone by the fire in the parlor, wrapped in quilts, watching the flames dance. They did not need words anymore. After so many years together, they could communicate in silence, in the comfortable weight of shared presence. But Cole spoke anyway, because some things deserved to be said aloud. "I love you, Willa Kincaid. I have loved you for 35 years, and I will love you for whatever time we have left and beyond. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, the reason every day is worth living. Thank you for trusting me, for choosing me, for building this life with me." Willa turned to him, cupping his weathered face in her hands. "I love you, Cole. You saved my life, and then you gave me a reason to live it fully. You showed me that some men keep their promises, that some loves last a lifetime. I would not change a single moment of our life together, not even the hard parts, because they all led us here. They kissed, long and sweet, a kiss that held 3.5 decades of love and commitment and shared joy. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and gentle, covering the world in white. But inside, by the fire, wrapped in each other's arms, Cole and Willa were warm and safe and completely content. The years continued to pass, bringing the inevitable changes that time demands. Cole's health began to fail in his early 70s, his heart weakening despite his still strong spirit. Willa cared for him with the same devotion he had shown her since the day he found her, sitting with him through long nights, holding his hand, reminding him of all the good years they had shared. On a spring morning, with wildflowers blooming across the meadows and the sound of cattle lowing in the distance, Cole passed away peacefully in their bed, Willa at his side. His last words were her name, spoken with all the love that had defined their marriage, and she held him as he took his final breath, her heart breaking even as she whispered that she would be all right, that their children would take care of her, that his legacy would live on in the family and ranch he had built. They buried Cole next to Martha in the cemetery behind the church, under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. The whole town turned out for the funeral, testament to the respect and affection Cole had earned over his lifetime. Matthew spoke of his father's integrity and kindness, Sarah of his gentle strength, James of the lessons he had taught about treating all creatures with respect. Willa stood between her children, drawing strength from them, knowing that Cole lived on in their faces and voices and values. After the funeral, Willa moved into the smaller cabin on the property, insisting that Matthew and his family take over the main house. She was 73 years old, still sharp-minded but physically frail, and she knew her time was growing short. She did not fear death. Cole was waiting for her on the other side, and she had lived a full and beautiful life. But she cherished her remaining time, her days with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, the quiet hours when she could sit on her porch and look out over the land she and Cole had loved. On an autumn afternoon, with leaves turning gold and red in the cottonwoods along the creek, Willa sat in her rocking chair, wrapped in one of Martha's old quilts. Her great-granddaughter, a bright child of 6 named Emma, climbed into her lap and asked for a story. "Tell me how you met Great-Grandpa Cole," Emma requested, as she often did. The story never grew old, never lost its power to captivate. So Willa told it one more time, about the snowstorm and the betrayal, about the cowboy who had saved her life and won her heart, about the family they had built together from nothing but love and hard work and faith in each other. Emma listened with wide eyes, asking her usual questions, and Willa answered them all with patience and joy. "So Great-Grandpa was a hero," Emma concluded when the story was done. "He was," Willa agreed. "But more than that, he was a good man. And that matters more than being a hero. Remember that, sweetheart. Look for the good men, the ones who are kind even when it costs them something, the ones who keep their promises and treat others with respect. Those are the ones worth loving." Emma nodded seriously, committing the lesson to memory, and Willa held her close, breathing in the scent of childhood innocence and possibility. This was what she and Cole had created, this legacy of love and wisdom passed down through generations. This was what made the hard times worth enduring, what gave meaning to suffering and loss. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, Willa felt a deep sense of peace. She had survived Thomas Garrett's cruelty and built a life more beautiful than she could have imagined. She had been loved deeply and had loved deeply in return. She had raised children who carried her values forward into the world. She had been given the greatest gift of all, a second chance, and the wisdom to recognize it and embrace it fully. That night, Willa passed away quietly in her sleep, dreaming of a snowstorm and a cowboy with storm-gray eyes who promised she was safe now. Her children found her in the morning, peaceful and smiling, and though they grieved, they also rejoiced, knowing she had lived fully and died content. They buried Willa beside Cole, their headstones side by side, united in death as they had been in life. The inscription on Willa's stone, chosen by her children, read simply, "Beloved wife, mother, grandmother. She was lost, but was found. She chose love." The ranch continued to prosper under Matthew's management and eventually under his children's. The story of Cole and Willa became family legend, told and retold to each new generation, a reminder that love can arise from tragedy, that trust can be rebuilt after betrayal, that choosing hope over bitterness can change the course of a life. Years turned into decades, and the Kincaid name became synonymous with integrity and hard work throughout Utah. Cole and Willa's descendants spread across the state and beyond, carrying with them the values they had learned from stories of their ancestors, from the tale of a woman left to die in a snowstorm, and the cowboy who proved not all men would leave. The land itself remembered them, the ranch they had built together, still standing strong, still producing cattle and horses, still home to family and love. In the winter, when snow fell soft on the Utah mountains, old-timers would tell the story of Cole Kincaid's ride through the blizzard, of how he found Willa Ramsey half frozen by the rocks and brought her home to his ranch. They would speak of the marriage that followed, of the family that grew from that chance meeting, of the legacy that proved love could conquer even the coldest winter and the deepest betrayal. And in the cemetery behind the church in Beaver, two headstones stood side by side beneath the cottonwoods, marking the resting place of two people who had found each other against all odds and built a lifetime of love from a single act of kindness. The stone was weathered now, softened by decades of wind and rain and snow, but the names remained clear: Cole Kincaid and Willa Kincaid, together in life, together in death, together forever in the hearts of those who remembered their story. The town of Beaver changed over the years, growing and modernizing, but some things remained constant. The church still stood, white and proud on its hill. The general store, though under new ownership, still served the community, and the Kincaid Ranch still sprawled across the eastern range, a testament to what two people could build when they chose love over fear, trust over bitterness, hope over despair. On winter evenings when snow fell gentle on the land, the descendants of Cole and Willa Kincaid would gather around fires in homes scattered across the state, and the story would be told again. Children would listen wide-eyed to the tale of their great-great-grandmother who nearly died in a blizzard, of their great-great-grandfather who saved her and won her heart. They would learn the lesson that Cole and Willa had lived, that some betrayals lead to greater blessings, that darkness can give way to light, that a single choice to help someone in need can change countless lives across generations. The story always ended the same way, with Cole and Willa living long, full lives surrounded by the family they had created, dying peacefully in the knowledge that their love had mattered, that their choices had made a difference, that they had built something lasting and beautiful from the ashes of betrayal and the snow of a winter storm. And the listeners would feel their own hearts lifted, reminded that goodness exists in the world, that love is possible even after loss, that happy endings are not just the stuff of fairy tales, but can be real and earned and lasting. This was the legacy of Cole and Willa Kincaid, a legacy not of wealth or fame, but of something far more valuable, proof that kindness matters, that integrity is its own reward, that choosing to trust again after betrayal takes courage but yields blessings beyond measure. Their story became part of the fabric of their family, woven into the identity of everyone who came after them. A reminder in hard times that survival is possible, that love is worth risking, that redemption awaits those brave enough to accept it. The ranch itself became a symbol of these truths, each generation adding to what Cole and Willa had built, honoring their memory by living according to the values they had exemplified. The house was expanded and modernized over the years, but the original structure remained at its heart, the rooms where Cole and Willa had lived and loved and raised their family, preserved as a reminder of where it all began. In the main living room, above the stone fireplace where Cole had first brought Willa to warm herself after her rescue, hung a painting commissioned by their children years after both had passed. It showed a cowboy on horseback in a snowstorm, reaching down to lift a woman wrapped in his coat, their faces barely visible through the swirling white, but their postures speaking of rescue and hope and the beginning of something profound. Beneath the painting, a small brass plaque bore the inscription, Love Found in the Storm Cole, and Willa Kincaid, 1878. Visitors to the ranch, whether family or friends, or the occasional historian interested in Utah's settlement era, would often stop before that painting, drawn by something in the image, by the story it told without words. And someone would inevitably share the full tale of betrayal and rescue, of trust rebuilt and love discovered, of a life built from the ruins of another's cruelty. The story never lost its power to move listeners, to remind them of what truly matters, to inspire them toward their own acts of kindness and courage. As the 20th century gave way to the 21st, as technology transformed even rural Utah, the Kincaid Ranch remained a constant, a link to history and heritage and the enduring truths that transcend time and change. Cole and Willa's descendants continued to work the land, to raise their families according to the values they had inherited, to tell the story to each new generation so that the lessons would not be lost. And on winter nights, when snow fell soft on the Utah mountains, just as it had in 1878, you could almost imagine a cowboy riding through the storm, searching the darkness for someone in need, ready to offer help without thought of reward or recognition. You could almost see a young woman wrapped in his coat, learning to trust again despite every reason not to, choosing hope over despair. You could almost feel the warmth of the ranch house fire, the safety of strong arms, the beginning of a love that would last a lifetime and echo through generations. This was the true ending of Cole and Willa's story. Not death, not even the beautiful life they had shared, but the continuation of their legacy in the lives they had touched and the family they had created. They had proven that one act of kindness could change everything, that choosing love over bitterness could transform not just two lives, but dozens, hundreds, that the impact of how we treat others ripples outward in ways we cannot predict or measure. She had been left in a snowdrift by a man she trusted, betrayed, and left to die, but the cowboy had proved not all men would leave. Cole Kincaid had stopped, had helped, had stayed, and in doing so had created a love story for the ages, a testament to the power of goodness and decency and the choice to do right even when it would be easier to ride on by. And that story, passed down through generations of Kincaids, remained as vital and true as the day it began, a reminder that we all have the power to be someone's rescue, someone's reason to trust again, someone's proof that goodness exists in the world. Cole and Willa had given that gift to each other, and through their descendants, they continued to give it to the world, one story, one listener, one choice at a time. The snow fell gently on their graves, on the ranch they had built, on the town that had welcomed them, on the mountains that had witnessed their love stories beginning. And somewhere in the wind, if you listened carefully, you could almost hear laughter, the sound of two souls who had found each other against all odds and built something eternal from a single moment of compassion in a winter storm.